Well, hello, you can see in front of me here an apple tree, variety Winter King, otherwise known as Winston. So I grafted this tree myself. I think that was about 5 years ago. So the tree is doing quite well in my opinion. So Winston is a great variety of apple to have. It's a long keeper and they can keep into the following year if you keep them under the correct circumstances. So very much worth getting into. So why graft? Well, it's a great way to propagate existing varieties of apple, say that you want to, continue. So for instance, let's say you've got a friend who has got let's pluck something out of the air, a Cox Orange Pippin, and you would like your own Cox Orange Pippin plant. You can just get a scion from their tree and graft onto your own tree or graft onto a rootstock as I have here. So you can see here now what we've got here is this is a piece of last year's growth, okay, the previous growing season's growth, and that is what you would cut off for grafting. So the thing you'd do is you'd cut it off ideally about February time, and you keep it in the fridge somewhere cool, and then you would graft around April time, and that's when you would proceed to do it. So grafting, you can graft more than one variety onto one tree, which can be great if you'd like to have more than one variety and you've only got a small garden or limited space that you can give to your apple tree project or whatever. And so brilliant for fertility as well, for pollination. So for example, if you've got a tree that needs or would benefit from a pollination partner, meaning another apple or whatever that flowers at the same time as that to help with pollination for greater fruit production, you can graft them onto the same tree. I mean, isn't that just a brilliant thing to be able to do? Very good for money saving as well. You can purchase a rootstock. My rootstocks for this project I got from Blackmore Nursery, so I suggest you check them out if you are interested. And just a great thing to do. So the rootstock I got from Stephen Hayes on the Stephen Hayes Fruitwise channel, so I suggest you check that one out. Now by scion, I mean what I stated earlier, a piece of last year's growth. So the rootstock for this, believe it or not, is all the way down here. And you can see it's quite a short rootstock actually, excuse me. So the rootstock is down there, and I did what I refer to as my own form of cleft graft, okay? So I've got my grafting playlist, so if you want to check that out, how I went around and done this. But so this was the scion here, and this would have been a little sort of stick when I did it. Yeah, it would have been about this size, so you can see that it really has thickened up down here. But that's the scion. That's the rootstock. I made the cleft graft down here. And to do grafting, really, all you need is a scion, a rootstock of some sort, or an existing tree, a grafting knife, which I used Opinel 6 on the Stephen Hayes recommendation, some grafting tape or flower arranging tape, and that's all you need. And it really is a great thing to get into, and it's really not as difficult as, one may think. And this tree, although I didn't see it in all of its glory last year, apparently it produced a very nice crop, so it could benefit from a little bit of formative pruning. But for a tree, that tree there, that's probably cost, I think the rootstock was about £2 maybe, something like that. So there's a £2 tree there that produces lovely crops really of long keeping apples. I mean, they're just a brilliant thing to get into. And you can see now it's established all that growth from here, look, there, all the way to there on the previous growing season. So very much worth doing. And also one thing about this is you can choose what rootstock you want to graft your project onto. So I'm going to keep this specific to apples, but I've got different size rootstocks which should limit the eventual size of the tree. This is on MM106 rootstock, which is otherwise known as a half standard. You've got M26, which I think is like a smallish tree. There's other ones as well, minarets. I think it's M111, which is a real big old sort of tree, eventually. So very much worth looking into, and you can, you really can expand your own sort of growing horizons, if you will, by learning how to do grafting. So I suggest you check out your playlist, my playlist, and the Stephen Hayes channel, and all over YouTube in books, and learn about grafting, because it really is a brilliant thing to do. So I mentioned it in the video the other day. What I normally do is purchase the rootstocks and then grow them on in pots for a year, and then I proceed to graft the following year, so the rootstock's a bit stronger. But this year I'm not going to do that. I'm going to graft actually on the year that I purchased them and see how it goes, because I like to do a bit of experimentation with this sort of thing, as many of you are aware. So it's generally recommended, with a relatively young tree like this, to keep the bottom bit free of weeds and grass, so that the tree he's not competing with other vegetation stuff, so that it can obtain more nutrients, if you will. But you can't do everything, can you, eh? But yeah, so there we go. So I'll link the video down below of one of the first ever YouTube videos I did of this tree, and you can then compare it and see just how well it's done in the 5 or so years. And I think if you have a go at your own sort of project, even if it's you got one in a pot and you want to graft, it might even be worth having a go at. Okay, so here is a rootstock actually left over from that grafting project a few years ago. So this is actually prime for what for me to do, or whoever to do some more grafting. So if you take a look at that rootstock is in there, and this will be a variety of apple in its own right, but not a specific one. Now, if you look at that, you can see what I've got here. That's the roots. The whole thing is a rootstock. But the way I'd go about it is I'd cut it off about here and here, and then do the little cleft, which is a slit down there like that. Okay, you have to check out the playlist if you want to, see it in detail. But I could graft 2 varieties onto that, maybe even more. There's all sorts of different grafts that rind graft. There's so much on there you can check out about grafting, and the potential of it is enormous for your own project. I mean, if you looked at this tree, it'd be very interesting to see just how many varieties you could get grafted onto here. You could maybe, you could even maybe try and graft onto here, could have a go onto here, onto here. You could maybe get 4 or 5, 6 varieties on this tree if you were so lucky. I'm not guaranteeing that, but it really would be worth you having a go at a bit of grafting. Particularly important for those people who have only got small growing spaces, because if you could get 2 or 3 varieties of apple off of this rootstock eventually, I think you'd be quite happy with that. And if you think you're going to pay 20 to 30 quid plus more maybe for a mature grafted tree, and you could do it yourself for a fraction of the cost of that, and learn something in the process, I think that would be worthwhile. So anyway, there you go. I can imagine that you've worked out my passion for grafting, and how I really would love it if you peeps out there had a go at it, because it's not as difficult as some people think. Just be careful you don't cut your finger with a grafting knife like I did a few years ago. Okay then. And we'll have one last look at the tree. If you like my work, please feel free to like, share and subscribe. And you can check me out on Dan_Home Gardens if you're interested. See you next time.